Greetings everyone, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, here to bring you another retro review from past seasons of The Loud House. In this video, we'll look at one of those Season 2 episodes I honestly cannot stand, and where the wrong characters are taking their frustrations out on the wrong character. Today's episode is titled, Making the Grade. First we'll discuss the plot, and then my thoughts and critiques with my final score. So, let's get right into it. The episode begins with Lincoln shocked to find out his little sister Lisa has been promoted to his 5th grade class. Her attitude and above average intelligence begin to annoy the rest of the class, including Lincoln's friends who don't want to sit with him anymore because of her. Lincoln suggests Lisa start acting a bit more normal like the rest of the class, and Lisa takes it upon herself to do just that. She ditches her glasses and becomes wittier and more rebellious at school with a shock collar to keep her in check. However, she decides to take her normality further by giving up all the things she used to love, such as using her skills and knowledge to help her family with their problems, and especially giving up finding a cure for strep throat, which her kindergarten classroom catches. Although Lisa is hesitant to go back to the way she was, Lincoln explains the world needs someone like her since she can do things no one else can, and that he would rather suffer the consequences rather than those sick kindergarten kids. Lisa goes back to being smart again and successfully completes her antidote for the virus to cure everyone. This act wins favor with Lincoln's friends, and they apologize for how they were acting before. Even so, Lisa decides to go back to kindergarten to pursue her own path her own way, and if her teacher tries to wake her up from her nap, the one advantage her classroom has, she will have to answer to her robot, Todd. Well, that concludes the plot of the episode, so now we come to my thoughts and critiques. I mentioned back in my Blinded by Science review that was the first time I rated a Lisa episode below an 8 out of 10. Of course, this episode is about Lisa, and it is below an 8 out of 10, but in my book, this is a joint Lisa-Lincoln episode where they have an equal amount of time shared. It's just as much her episode as it is his. So when it comes to terrible episodes with more than one character as the central focus, Making the Grade is definitely one of them. The first half of the episode was pretty standard, and it actually made a lot of sense. We've all seen other shows do this, where a child genius gets promoted to a higher grade in school. However, most of the time, the genius is taken advantage of, and they begin to feel like they don't belong in a class where no one really likes them except for their intelligence. They did something like that on Hey Arnold, and I can safely say the grade promotion storyline was done better there than here. However, the central idea to both episodes of both shows is very clear, which would be you never know how good you have it with that certain someone, and you never truly appreciate who they are and what they can do until they're gone, and you can no longer rely on them. I don't have a problem with that message at all. It's how the plot tries to present the message is what I have a problem with, and it's not executed correctly. You can say Lisa wanted to be more accepted by others and not feel like an outcast, but isn't that how it was in kindergarten? She was always the loner because she was too smart for everyone, so what difference would it make going to the 5th grade? I guess because she understood her brother was no longer on good terms with his friends because of her behavior in class, kind of a stupid reason to stop having lunch with him, she thought trying to be more like Lincoln's friends would make things right again. And she was right. Her acting a bit more like an average 5th grader was to her and Lincoln's benefit. However, she was taking it too far and effectively giving up being smart for everyone, not just for a bunch of 5th graders. When Lincoln said to be more average and not act too smart in class, he didn't mean for Lisa to bring her newfound attitude home. He thought Lisa would have been sensible enough to find a balance between being a brainiac and being a normal kid. Maybe Lisa took her sociological challenge too far and found she's better off being a regular kid? It's anyone's guess, but that's the least of the problems I had with this episode. It's one thing for Luna to be upset about Lisa no longer helping her study for tests, but it's something entirely different when her dad, a chef, needs to rely on Lisa to help convert measurements in a recipe because of metrics. Apparently, all those years of learning and perfecting his cooking craft, and we get this dinner scene and explanation behind his poorly made food? I'm not buying it. It's right up there with Read Aloud, who doesn't have enough common sense to know to arrive early at a train station to wait for Pop-Pop to come in. It seems like these parents have grown too dependent on a 4-year-old to do and remember things that don't require a triple-digit IQ. And let's not forget how Lincoln's siblings just pushed him out of the car because Lisa, being as smug as ever when you look at that face she makes, intentionally lost a radio contest for them. In all instances, she thanks Lincoln, and everyone gets mad at him for things that aren't his fault. You could say, well, he told Lisa to start acting more normal and should have realized what could happen. Here's the thing, though. Lisa knew full well she was not stupid and that her vast knowledge on all kinds of subjects weren't wiped from her brain. She was intentionally refusing to help anyone with anything even remotely considered intelligent, i.e., something that reminded Lisa of how smart she was. So, in turn, Lincoln has to take all the heat from everyone because of Lisa's refusal to be smart. That's simply not fair. They're taking their anger out on the wrong person. The biggest offender of this is Miss Srinivas, Lisa's kindergarten teacher. In the flashback early in the episode, she gets annoyed with Lisa because the little genius is outright saying how many monkeys are in the book instead of counting along with the rest of the class. She thinks Lisa is being cranky and needs a nap. Lisa says she doesn't want to nap because she's close to finishing an antidote for strep throat. But her teacher pushes her off to sleep and tells her, and I quote, "You can play more later." Whether Lisa was going to finish her antidote before going to Lincoln's class, or if her teacher just threw away her chemicals at some point, is something to think about. But thanks to Miss Srinivas and her spiteful attitude, all her students got sick, and she was practically begging Lisa to find the cure that Lisa was already working on. Lisa declines and essentially thanks Lincoln for why she won't do it, and this teacher gets mad at her brother. Look, I understand a little bit of why Lincoln is to partially blame, even though it's still technically not his fault. There was never a moment of self-reflection in Miss Srinivas. She never thought, gee, Lisa was working on an antidote the entire time, and I was just mad because she wasn't participating in class with the other students. Maybe if I hadn't been so bitter and vindictive, maybe my class wouldn't have gotten sick. Nope. She just blames Lincoln and takes no responsibility in how her actions contributed to the problem. But I have to admit that even if Lisa was trying to stick it to Miss Srinivas from earlier in the episode, the fact she was willing to let a bunch of little kids get sick and possibly spread the virus around school just so she could keep her Fonzie level of coolness with Lincoln's peers is inexcusable. Simply put, the majority of the characters in this episode were, for lack of a better term, terrible, and no matter how much you want to blame Lincoln for starting the series of events that unfolded, it was Lisa who ultimately exacerbated the conflict by willingly giving up parts of her personality when she didn't have to and when it wasn't necessary. Was it to teach everyone a lesson? Who knows? And for me, it just doesn't matter. Overall, this episode really is one of the worst of the series. I tried to understand the idea of this episode, and I could see where the story was heading, and it was making sense for a little bit. However, it started going off the rails the moment Lisa started giving up on who she was and effectively used Lincoln as a scapegoat for her new take on life. Even if you want to pretend she didn't know she was making his life worse, which I truly don't believe. No matter what, Lincoln ended up being hated by his friends when Lisa was smart, and then hated by his family and Lisa's kindergarten teacher when he wanted Lisa to tone down her smartness with no self-reflection on their behavior towards him or if their actions helped contribute to the conflict. Lincoln didn't think Lisa would take his advice to the extreme. As a side note, this isn't the first time people in Season 2 take things to the extreme with Lincoln, but that's another story. And even Lisa proved to be a negative. I understand part of her reason to change, but still inexcusable. In short, there was nothing great about this episode, and that's just putting it mildly. With that said, I give Making the Grade a 3 out of 10. Well, folks, that concludes my review of Making the Grade. There are only so many episodes from this series I can say are horribly written, and unfortunately, this is one of them. If you like this, that's great, but for me, it's not worth the time watching. So what did you guys think of it? Love it? Hate it? Something you would add? Change? Keep it as it is? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to this channel for the latest Loud House content. That's going to do it for me. I'll catch you guys for the next video, but until then, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, signing off. Peace out, home slices.